why the continued international silence, and how many people in Gaza will have to die before we see any type of real reaction coming from the so-called official international community?
It's really a huge tragedy. And a lot of people in different nations, we have protests and demonstrations going on, but it's the leaders of nations, specifically the United States, the British, Arab League, or many of the Arab nations, they are implicit in this massacre. And all the Palestinians are paying the price. The death toll is on them. This is a crime against humanity. It's a crime against you and I. It's a crime against international law. And unless we defend the Gazans with everything that we have, be it giving them our voice, everything, every possible way, we will ourselves become the next target. And it's mind-boggling that the Arab leaders don't comprehend this. They don't understand that Israelis have specifically said they do not want Arab neighbors. An Israeli expert as recently as 1998, a water expert, has said that if we move out of an area, then Arabs will move in. And so we cannot allow Arabs to be our neighbors. Now, do the Saudis imagine for a moment? I'm not talking about the people in Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about the leadership. Do they think for a moment they're going to be looked differently as an Arab? They will not. This is an assault on all, and we must all come together. And United Nations is just baffling what they're doing. I mean, United States has always backed Israel's massacres, its genocide, and even in 2008, 2009, when it used phosphor and every heinous crime that is possible, Mr. Obama rewarded them. In March of 2009, after he took the White House, he delivered more weapons to them. So it's really, I believe, up to the people to stop what is happening, because many of the Western leaders, as you correctly said, the international community, which is America and its Black key leaders, allies around the world, are not doing anything to stop this. So either we have laws or we don't live under the law, but we can't have it both ways.
Okay, stay with me, please, Ms. Ulrich. Crossing over to New York, I'd like to get Dr. Nasser Al-Omari, writer and political commentator, in on this discussion. Thanks so much for being with us. How do you see it, sir? Is it that the official international community or the United Nations basically picks and chooses lives that seem to be of various value? It appears that with the Palestinians, that do not hold a whole lot of weight as far as from the official international community of the United Nations, and reaction. We saw last week with the airplane that was shot down over Ukraine, immediately a minute of silence, and of course rightly so, of the people, almost 300 people dying there, and immediate condemnation. But now we have over 577 Gazans who have been killed, and no official reaction like that. Your take, do they pick and choose whose life has value and which one doesn't?
Well, I think politicians, Western politicians and the Western political elite have undermined their own morality. What do we stand for when we defend the cold-blooded killing of children in Gaza? What possible reason can we find for them to allow the Israelis to, kind of approve of their actions behind closed doors when they are targeting kids one shot after another? I mean, you make a mistake once, and then you turn around and you discover that, your actions are killing children, and you stop. But every shot that is fired at Gaza is hitting children. And as an Israeli, you are watching this, and somehow you find justification, and you even, some Israelis applaud these actions. Morally, we have, we are seeing the West and the Zionist state, with its current leadership, undermining itself morally. How can you look Osama bin Laden in the eye and say, why did you kill our people in New York, when you are looking at the Israelis and kind of allowing them to do almost the same thing that they did, in New York City to innocent Americans, the same exact thing. The Western political elite have undermined, the Western values that they never stopped preaching to countries like Iran and to Bashar al-Assad and to and everybody who can hear. It's really a shame to see these politicians think so low.
Well, Dr. Omari, not only the politicians, but do you think this time around also the mass media and the role that they're playing basically in propping up the Zionist regime has been more exposed this time around, their biased perspective and the way that they're showing this crisis taking place in Gaza?
I think it's even worse than that. I think it's pure marketing and money in the United States. You say the wrong thing on one of these stations that seem to criticize the state of Israel, and you find yourself, under a lot of pressure. It has really become an issue of marketing and rating, and what do you say in such situation? I live in the U.S. and I listen to the news and watch what's being said about Gaza. And you scratch your head when you hear, all the crying and weeping over the poor Israelis who have to go to the shelters. And they mention, in passing, oh, by the way, about 400 Palestinians have been killed. It's really a shame, and it's pure marketing. It's about money. And it's about ratings, and it's about not standing up for what's right. We're really talking about propaganda here in most American stations.
Crossing back to Irvine and Ms. Ulrich, your take, you said earlier that basically it's up to the people of the world to make changes. And we have seen actually more of a reaction this time around throughout, all the continents in general. People have been taking to the streets. But tell me, how do they turn in this as far as demonstrating against Israel to actually pressuring their governments into changing their outright and blatant support for the Tel Aviv regime?
Nothing in life worth doing is easy, and its demonstrations are wonderful, which of course are not being shown on American TV at all. The Western media is hiding that fact. But what we can do in addition to the demonstrations is, for example, we've called for a boycott of 3 television stations or news stations, CNN, Fox, and CBS. They're going to be boycotted for 3 days. And as soon as the ratings fall, one would hope that they would change their ways. In addition to that, I have told many friends on Facebook, people who are active, that because we see ghastly pictures coming out of Gaza, children that should be sucking on milk bottles are being bombed. One has to take these pictures, print them out, send it to the representatives in America, in England, anywhere else, and say, not in my name, not with my money. This has come down to every citizen having to work hard to save humanity. The propaganda that we hear on Western media is trying to show this as a fight between equals. It's not. It's 1.7 million people trapped in an area with nowhere to go. And this is a repeat of Deir Yassin, where they massacred people and sent them off and exiled them so they could take over the land, the Israelis. And at that time, they were rewarded. They were rewarded again every time they've acted against humanity. And if it's not stopped, and if it's the governments will not, some governments, thankfully, are very decent. Chile has stopped all trade talks. Sweden has stopped giving fight over to Israelis, or the Israeli president. So some countries are taking note of their citizens, but we must continue. We must fight alongside the Gazans, because it's not just about them, as I said. It's about every one of us. If I don't defend myself against aggression by defending a Gazan, tomorrow is going to be my turn, and we need to make sure that everybody understands this, and we need to give voice to the Gazans.
Well, Ms. Ulrich, you just said about, let's look at the United States and basically printing out pictures and sending it to their representatives as far as the Americans, and putting pressure on their representatives and senators like that. However, if we look at the impact that AIPAC has inside of the country, and also the money and benefit, if you want to call it, that these so-called representatives of the American people get, actually, many times they will say, many activists will say that the representatives, the senators of the United States, seems to be representing Tel Aviv's interests before the interests of the American people. So how do you get over that problem that seems to be quite common now in the United States?
That is very common. What you've stated is very true. The United States Congress does represent Tel Aviv 100%. Maybe there are one or two decent people in there. However, if we continue to believe that our actions will not bear fruit because they're so dominant, because their voice is so strong, because they have the money, then we'll sit back and do nothing. And AIPAC and other Israeli lobby groups and the think tanks, they rely on us not doing anything. Regrettably, most Americans are brainwashed, and they don't realize how bad things are. I mean, when the media is showing that Israel is defending itself instead of being an aggressor, they sit back and do very little and thinking, well, we're doing the right thing. But every one of us can make a difference. If I speak today and I don't have to be on television to speak, even if I speak amongst friends, even if I can bring over one person to understand the reality, that person can change another person. The people are far greater in number than the AIPAC lobby group. The maximum, the percentage of the Jewish people in this country, and many Jews are opposed to what Israel is doing, is about 6%. A lot of the Christian Zionists are pro-Israeli aggression and massacres, but their numbers are far less than the population of this country. And I'm sure we can make a difference.